Hey everybody. So I want to start off my argument here today by looking at the charts. And so if you're a fan of the Trade for Yourself podcast and you've been listening to what I talk about, you understand that the chart is normally the last thing I talk about. But this is very, very important because I believe this chart tells us a story. And I believe that when we look at charts and we look at the market, technicals and prices will tell us a story about a particular stock. And so this is a daily chart, and this chart goes back to about May of last year. And so we look at this chart, we see AMD made a low of $54.57. Since it made that low, this pretty much showed us, hey, this is as low as AMD is going to go, pre-pandemic levels, the whole 9 yards, right? But if we look at technicals, we look at structure. This was the low. We had a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. And right here, this particular gap, okay, there's a gap right here that I really want us to highlight, okay? There's a gap right here, and I'm not going to let this gap go by without drawing a triangle here, drawing a shape here to let you know exactly what I am talking about, okay? There is a gap. There was a gap right here, and this gap is very, very important. Why did AMD gap up right here? AMD gapped up right here because on May 24th, NVIDIA announced their earnings. They announced their guidance, and NVIDIA went up 30% overnight. A rising tide will lift all boats. And so many other semiconductor companies gapped up as well. So AMD gapped up because of NVIDIA, because investors were saying, hey, AMD is going to go up because NVIDIA was going to go up because they play in the same lanes. And so if you look at it and you see AMD gapped up, went on a crazy run, came back down, actually went higher, and the stock stopped out at $132.83. But then the stock began to come back down, and it began to fill this gap, and it closed this gap. But if you look at it technically, it came back down. It still respected some key technical levels, and it began to push back higher. What's the main story around this particular chart? The story that I believe that this chart is telling me is that AMD is going to continue to make higher highs and higher lows. And I believe that what we are seeing here is that AMD has another date with $132.83. And I believe that it's going to exceed that. Okay, now remember, this is a daily chart. Let's look at this thing on a weekly chart. Now, if we examine AMD on a weekly chart, we see the same things. We see the same higher highs, higher lows. But what we see right here is that AMD stopped out at resistance. AMD stopped out at resistance right here of $132.83. What I'm thinking is that AMD is going to retest this, is going to break it, and is going to keep moving to higher highs. It's going to have a date with 141, another level of resistance. And I believe that this stock is going to continue to make higher highs because I believe there are certain metrics that the stock is going to continue to deliver on, and investors are going to love what they see. So let's go into the next portion of this episode to show you some trades that I'm in, some particular trades that I'm actually in right now.